I remember the sound of his laugh before it turned into something I didn't recognize. There was a time when Nathan would reach for my hand without thinking, when silence between us felt warm rather than cold. We were the couple others envied, at least that's what I believed. He was ambitious, driven, with a smile that could charm anyone in the room. And I was steady, supportive, believing that love was something you maintained with patience and trust. We built our lives like a house of cards meticulously, delicately, until one gust of cold air started to bring it down. It wasn't sudden. At first, I didn't even realize it was happening. He started coming home late, said work was pressing, or that the project was at a critical point. And I believed him, why wouldn't I? He'd never given me reason to doubt. But then his eyes started to move past me instead of into me. He'd sit beside me on the couch and still feel a mile away. The first time I questioned anything was when he canceled our anniversary dinner. He claimed his boss had called a last-minute strategy session. I even tried to be understanding, bought takeout, lit candles, waited until midnight, but he never came. When he walked in the door, smelling like expensive perfume that wasn't mine, I said nothing. I smiled. I believed him. I needed to the changes piled up like mail on the kitchen counter. His phone, once forgotten on tables and shelves, now stayed glued to his hand. The password changed. He took calls in the bathroom with the door locked. One night, as I walked past the room, I heard him say, "I miss you already." I stood frozen, back pressed against the hallway wall, waiting for the explanation that never came. When he saw me, he only said, "It was work." There was a night I asked him if he was happy. Just that, "Are you happy?" And he looked at me like the question itself offended him. "Of course I'm happy," he said. "Why wouldn't I be?" But his eyes were empty when he said it. I wanted to believe. He meant it. I clung to the version of us that once existed, the one that danced in hotel rooms and whispered jokes during long flights. And still, I implored him. I begged him silently in every dinner I cooked, every kiss I offered, and every time I folded his laundry. I asked him not with words, but with consistency, with love, with presence, to stay, to fight, to try. But he kept slipping away, and I kept pretending not to notice. Marcella noticed. She always did. Over coffee one morning she asked, "Is he okay? You seem off." I smiled, brushed it off. She pressed again. "You don't have to pretend if something's wrong." But I wasn't ready to admit it. Saying it out loud would make it real. There were signs, but I chose not to read them. Lipstick on his collar one morning that wasn't mine. A hotel keycard in his coat pocket. Receipts for dinner for two at places we'd never been together. Each one of these, a whisper in the back of my mind. Each one, I pushed away with fragile logic. Maybe it's a client. Maybe it's for work. Maybe I'm imagining it all. But in my bones I knew. Women always do. We feel it in the way he kisses us goodbye or forgets to at all. In the way his phone stays face down on the table. In the way his fingers stop lingering on our skin. He stopped saying, "I love you" without being prompted. He stopped noticing when I got my hair done, when I bought a new dress. And still, I gave him time. I gave him room to come back to me. I stayed soft, hopeful, praying that the man I married was still somewhere inside this colder version. I wasn't afraid of losing him. I was afraid he was already gone. One night, as we lay in bed, I turned to him and whispered, "Whatever. Whatever's wrong, can we fix it?" He exhaled through his nose, not even turning to face me. "There's nothing wrong," he said flatly. But everything in that moment told me otherwise. I stared at the ceiling in the dark, listening to the rhythm of his breath, wondering who had heard that same breath pressed against her ear. I didn't know her name. I didn't know the story. But I knew deep down I was not alone in this marriage anymore. The silence between us became a language of its own. He no longer tried to hide his distance. The man who once woke me with coffee now left before sunrise without a word. I stopped asking where he was going. I stopped asking when he'd be back. The answers didn't matter anymore. I had already memorized his new patterns, late nights, weekend meetings, vague excuses laced with irritation. He moved like a man haunted, but not by guilt. More like impatience, like I was in the way. I stopped wearing perfume. I stopped dressing up for dinner. He didn't notice either way. And yet I clung to some thread of dignity, telling myself, he's tired. This is just a phase. But something had shifted. The warmth was gone. It was no longer about confusion. It was about clarity I didn't want to accept. Marcella came over one afternoon, her presence grounding as always. She didn't dance around it anymore. "You don't smile when you talk about him," she said. I looked down at my tea. She continued, "Are you afraid of what you'll find if you really look?" I didn't answer. She didn't need me to. I waited until Nathan left his phone unattended in the kitchen. It buzzed once, twice. I told myself I wouldn't look. But I did. I picked it up, not out of curiosity, but survival. The message read, "Last night was perfect. Same time tomorrow?" My chest went still, no name, just those words. So casual, so practiced. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, cold ceramic tile under my bare feet, and let the truth sink into my bones. He was cheating. It was no longer a suspicion. It was written in pixels, in secrets sent behind my back. The phone screen dimmed. My reflection stared back at me, expressionless. He came home hours later, smelling like hotel soap and someone else's skin. I watched him from across the room as he poured himself a drink. "How was your day?" I asked, voice steady. He looked up, surprised. "Busy," he replied. "Exhausting." He didn't look me in the eyes. I wanted to confront him right there, to scream, to throw the phone at his chest and demand answers. But instead, I said nothing. I tucked the truth away like a weapon I wasn't ready to use. Not yet. I needed more. Over the next few days, I became a different woman. Still kind, still composed, but no longer blind. I paid attention. I checked pockets. I noted the names he dropped, the stories he told. His lies were clumsy now, almost lazy. "Going to dinner with Jason from work," he'd say. Jason had quit last month. I followed him once. Not out of paranoia by then, it was about confirmation. He didn't go to a meeting. He went to her. I saw them from across the street, laughing over wine like high school lovers. She leaned in. He touched her hand. It was all so natural for them. I stood behind the wheel of my parked car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. I didn't take a photo. I didn't need to. The image would be burned into my mind forever. He came home and kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. I wanted to laugh at the irony. I had given this man my whole self, and he gave pieces of himself to someone else like they were free samples. Then came the charity gala, a work event. I'd attended every year. This time I almost skipped it. But something in me wanted to watch them in their element, in plain sight. She was there, Lena. I didn't need an introduction. I recognized her by the way he looked at her across the room. Like I didn't exist. Like I was a stranger. She was polished, poised, the kind of woman who studied a man before approaching. When our eyes met, something passed between us. She smiled politely, but her eyes said everything. She knew who I was, and I knew who she was. It was the kind of silent acknowledgement only two women with the same man can share. I didn't confront her. I didn't need to. I watched how Nathan lingered near her table, how he laughed in ways he never did at home. I watched the way she touched his arm, She was confident. She didn't see me as competition. Why would she? I was the wife still pretending. Asterisk later. That night, I climbed into bed beside him. He was scrolling through his phone, face lit by the screen. I whispered, "Do you still love me?" He paused. "What kind of question is that?" I said nothing. He returned to scrolling. Asterisk I turned to the wall, eyes wide open, in the dark, and whispered the truth to myself. He never stopped, not even when I begged him with silence, with softness, with loyalty. I implored him to continue to be who he was. And he chose someone else instead. He was still lying when I finally decided to stop asking questions. I had gathered enough. The messages, the subtle gestures, the emotional absence, it was all a trail of proof that didn't need confrontation anymore. I wasn't looking for apologies. I wasn't looking to win him back. I was looking for a way out that didn't leave me shattered. Asterisk I started to detach. Quietly, no screaming, no begging. I moved like a ghost in my own home, watching him replay the same routine, thinking he was still fooling me. I cooked dinner. I smiled when required. I kissed him goodnight without meaning it. Each action was a thread I cut inside myself. He didn't notice. That's how far gone he was. Asterisk I opened a new bank account in my name. Transferred money slowly. Called a lawyer. I packed little things, jewelry, documents, memories I didn't want to leave behind. All without a single change in expression. I wasn't waiting for him to change anymore. I was preparing for a life without him. Asterisk when I confronted him, I wasn't angry. I didn't raise my voice. I sat across from him and said, "I know." He didn't ask what I meant. He only went still like a child caught in the act. I told him about the messages, the nights, the lies. I spoke every word with clarity, like a narrator reading a script already written. He didn't deny it. He just stared down at his hands and said, "I never wanted to hurt you." Asterisk I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. Hurt me? He'd already destroyed me. Not with violence, not with cruelty, but with the slow erosion of loyalty, the kind that leaves you hollow long before you realize you're broken. Asterisk he tried to explain. Said it wasn't serious. Said Lena was just a phase, that it got out of control. I looked at him and asked, "When exactly did you plan to stop?" He didn't answer. That silence was louder than anything he'd said all year. Asterisk I asked him one last question. Why her? He hesitated, then said, "She made me feel new, like I wasn't fading." That was the moment I knew it was never really about her. It wasn't about love. It was about his ego, about escaping the weight of growing older, of being seen for what he was becoming. Asterisk I told him I was leaving. He looked surprised, like he hadn't expected that far ahead. "You're giving up?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, you did. I'm just finally following your lead." Asterisk the next morning, I left the house before he woke up. I didn't slam doors. I didn't leave dramatic notes. I left a simple letter on the kitchen table. It said, "You never ceased." Even when I implored you to stop, so now I must. That was all. Asterisk I moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. It was quiet, unfamiliar, but it was mine. I didn't miss the silence of our home. This silence felt clean. I cried sometimes more out of relief than sorrow. I had mourned that marriage long before I walked away from it. Asterisk Marcella helped me rebuild. She brought me wine on Tuesdays, laughed with me on the floor as we unpacked boxes. "You didn't lose," she told me. "You chose yourself." And for the first time in months, I believed her. Asterisk Nathan called a few times. Left messages, said he missed me, said he was willing to fix things. I never returned those calls. He had his chances too. Many. I had begged in silence, in faith, in loyalty. He didn't listen then. I had nothing left to say now. Asterisk, I saw Lena once, at a bookstore. She didn't see me. She was alone, scanning through a novel, her face blank. I felt no hatred toward her. Just pity. She didn't win anything. She just happened to catch a man in freefall. Asterisk, healing was slow. It didn't come in a rush. It came in tiny moments, waking up without dread, eating alone without loneliness, laughing without guilt. Each day I stitched myself back together. Not the woman I was before him, but someone wiser. Someone who now understood that love isn't about begging someone to stay. It's about knowing when to let go. Asterisk, I still think about him sometimes. Not with longing, but with clarity. He made a choice. Over and over again. And so did I. I chose peace. I chose dignity. I chose an end. Asterisk, he never stopped. Not once. And I'll never understand how someone could look love in the face and still walk away from it. But I don't need to understand anymore. Some answers aren't worth chasing. Some stories are better closed without a final chapter. Asterisk, this was mine. A few weeks after I left, he sent me an email. No subject line. Just a paragraph that read like regret, but not quite. I've been thinking, he wrote, about all the small things. The way you used to fold my shirts, the way you knew. When I was lying but didn't call me out. I don't know how to be without that. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have words, but because nothing he could say now would matter. His reflections weren't remorse. They were loneliness disguised as clarity. Asterisk, people talk about closure, like it's a door you can shut once and for all. But sometimes closure is just acceptance. I didn't need him to bleed honesty. I didn't need him to confess what I already knew. What I needed was space. And that's exactly what I had. Asterisk, I had spent so long waiting for him to change that. I forgot I was allowed to move on without his permission. That I didn't owe him forgiveness just because we shared a bed, or a name, or history. Healing wasn't about reclaiming what was lost. It was about finding myself beneath the wreckage and realizing I was still whole. Asterisk, some nights, I still felt echoes of our life. A certain song, or the smell of his cologne on someone else, would pull at old threads, but I didn't unravel. I let the memory come, acknowledged it, and let it pass. That was the difference now. The past didn't own me. It visited, but it no longer stayed. Asterisk, Marcella once asked me if I regretted not confronting Lena, if maybe I had left something unresolved. But there was nothing she could have told me that I didn't already know. She wasn't the architect of the destruction. Nathan was. Lena was just the exit he chose. Confronting her would have been noise. My silence was the consequence. Asterisk, I watched our wedding video once. Just once. I thought it would break me. But it didn't. It just felt foreign. Like watching two actors play roles in a film I didn't audition for. He looked at me like I was everything. Maybe he meant it. Or maybe he just liked how he looked loving me. I'll never know, and I don't need to. Asterisk, I learned to enjoy solitude. I lit candles for myself, took myself out to breakfast. I smiled at strangers. I slept diagonally across the bed and left dishes in the sink if I felt like it. These small things became freedom. Not rebellious, not dramatic, just mine. Asterisk, I ran into his sister at a cafe. She didn't mention him. She hugged me tightly and said, "You deserved better." I nodded, not because I needed the validation, but because I finally believed it. Even the people closest to him saw what he couldn't or wouldn't admit. Asterisk, he reached out again, months later. Another message. This time it said, "I've made a mess I can't fix. I thought you'd always wait." That was the root of it. He thought my love was eternal, unconditional, without limits. He thought loyalty was a leash. He mistook endurance for blindness. Asterisk, I didn't hate him. I didn't love him anymore either. What remained was something quieter, an understanding of what happens when someone you trust chooses themselves over you. Again and again. The kind of betrayal that doesn't scream, it erodes. Asterisk, there's no revenge in my story. No scandal. No dramatic downfall. Just the simple decision to leave when staying meant losing myself. And maybe that's what hurts him most. That I didn't collapse. That I didn't beg. That I didn't make a scene. I just left. With grace, with silence. With everything he never gave me. Asterisk, sometimes people ask why I stayed as long as I did. The truth is, I love the idea of who he used to be. I held on to that longer than I should have. But love without honesty is just a performance. And I stopped performing. Asterisk now. When I look back, I don't see failure. I see survival. I see a woman who gave everything, got nothing, and still walked out standing tall. I didn't need him to come back. I didn't need him to understand. I needed me to rise from the ashes without apology. Asterisk, he never stopped cheating. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. He betrayed every version of us. And still, I never screamed. I simply stopped waiting. Asterisk, that was the last thing. I gave him my silence.